Well, thank you, Mr. President.
So what you're about to watch is Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and President Trump having a conversation turn into a full-blown debate in front of the press that no one was expecting. Let's hear it.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to meet with you so that we can work together in a bipartisan way to meet the needs of the American people.
As we start to dissect this conversation, what we first hear is Nancy Pelosi insert her position or convey her position outright, which is that we're here to work together in a bipartisan way to meet the needs of the American people, followed by her interest.
I think the American people recognize that we must keep government open, that a shutdown is not worth anything, and that you should not have a Trump shutdown.
The interest in this case is that they're looking to keep the government open. And from her lens, that is very important, which underlines why her position that they need to work in a bipartisan way is essential for them to navigate artfully and effectively here.
You have the White House,
did you say Trump?
Shutdown. You have the White House, you have the Senate, you have the House of Representatives.
So already what you start seeing within the first minute of this interaction is something that I like to call battling for ascendancy. It's a communication dynamic where each side wants to feel heard, but doesn't actually give the other side the opportunity to fulfill that need. As you see, President Trump actually deflects at one point to Schumer and has a smug look on his face. And as we reach the end of the interaction, you see that each person actually interrupts the other. President Trump even goes so far as to say, "Excuse me," but doesn't actually wait for confirmation as to whether or not he's actually been excused.
If it's not going to pass in the Senate, I don't want to waste time.
Which is followed by Trump's position statement. Before we even have the opportunity to actually dissect what it is that Nancy first said, they go into this dynamic of battling for ascendancy, which then results in Trump stating his own position, which is, if it's not going to pass in the Senate, I don't want to waste time.
If we thought we were going to get it passed in the Senate, Nancy, we would do it immediately.
Which is actually his interest as well. In every argument and in any negotiation that you go into, the position and the interests are the first thing that you want to hear for. The position is what is said, and the interest is why that is being said. For President Trump, for him, why would he want to do something if in his mind it wouldn't work? So the interest statement in this case is that they're not going to pass in the Senate, so why do it? Which creates a dynamic that any other information is filtered through.
Okay, let me ask you this, and we're doing this in a very friendly manner. It doesn't help for me to take a vote in the House where I will win easily with the Republicans. It doesn't help to take that vote because I'm not going to get the vote of the Senate. I need 10 senators. That's the problem.
If you were a fly on the wall, you would sense that the energy in this space is highly frustrating, probably a bit disrespectful. And what is more important is that no one is actually listening to one another. The tension is palpable. And if you can look at the body clues or the body language clues, you will see that each person is actually cut off from the other. No one is engaging in a dialogue. Everyone is stuck in their mind, wanting to see or hear what it is they are looking for, and just go along according with that. Unfortunately, what this creates is more of that battling for ascendancy dynamic. No one feels heard, more frustration, and more tension.
Let me just say one thing. The fact is, you do not have the votes in the House.
Nancy, I do. And we need border security. Nancy, we need border security. It's very simple.
Of course we do.
We need border security.
So here was actually the first time that they could actually agree on something, yet no one picked it up, which is that they all agree on border security. The thing is that no one can figure out is what does that even mean and what does that even look like. They each have different interpretations of the same interest statement, but an artful negotiator would seize on that opportunity to be able to string along a series of comments and questions in order to solicit the common ground here. Unfortunately, because there is a battling for ascendancy dynamic, their ears are closed to this otherwise seemingly common ground need of theirs that is being vocalized. A missed opportunity.
People, our border agents, all of our law enforcement has been incredible what they've done. But we caught 10 terrorists. These are people that were looking to do harm. We need the wall.
So here was a very important piece that President Trump ended up asserting. A data point. They had caught 10 terrorists, which to anyone hearing this would be, wow, that means something. That must mean that you have a credible claim. Yet, unfortunately, he doesn't back it up with any data. Where is he getting this? Is it that someone caught them? Who is reporting on it? If you're going to assert a data point within a negotiation or a conversation, you should at least be able to have it be backed up. In this case, President Trump does something that ends up actually deflecting the ability to even confirm or deny this data point, which you'll see now.
More important than anything, we need border security, of which the wall is just a piece. But it's important. Chuck, did you want to say something?
Yeah, here's what I want.
So right there, did you catch it? Right as President Trump ended up finishing his sentence, he deflects immediately to Chuck. Hey, Chuck, did you want to say something? You can see almost on Nancy Pelosi's lips the itching, almost the yearning to actually address that claim, but she doesn't get the ability to. When you're in a battling for ascendancy dynamic, the person does not want you to actually confirm or deny what they're being said because the best argument wins. And when you're in a dynamic that you're not allowed to go on your smartphone or Google or be able to actually find out whether or not the data point is correct, this actually works to your benefit because you can pigeonhole or cave someone into a specific position that they may not otherwise want to be in without the ability to look for outside resources. But see what Chuck does, which is really important.
The Washington Post today gave you a whole lot of Pinocchios because they say you constantly misstate how much the wall is built, how much of the wall is built, and how much is there. But that's not the point.
So Chuck did something artfully well, which is he addressed what Nancy could not do. What he did bad, however, was that he personalized it.
The Washington Post today gave you a whole lot of Pinocchios because they say you constantly misstate how much the wall is built, how much of the wall is built, and how much is there. But that's not the point.
The Washington Post gave you a lot of Pinocchios, which to anyone hearing that means you're a liar. And anyone, whether consciously or unconsciously, would hear that and be like, ow, he thinks I'm a liar. And whether or not your face shows that you've been hurt by it, you internalize that notion and don't allow yourself to be open to an outside data point that could otherwise actually quash your argument. What Chuck does well is that at least when inserting a data point, he indicates the source, Washington Post. So in this case, it's credible, or at least to any outside party, could be backtracked.
We don't. We want to come to an agreement. If we can't come to an agreement, we have solutions that will pass the House and Senate right now and will not shut down the government, and that's what we're urging you to do. Not threaten to shut down the government, because let me just finish, because you can't get your way.
So this part is extremely important. It's probably the climax of this conversation, because Chuck actually challenges President Trump's power by saying, let me just finish. A man-to-man combat, so to speak, is resulting, which is, in this case, something that President Trump allows and also indicates that the dynamic is worsening. The communication space, if any, is non-existent. And because it's non-existent, what it means is that everyone is raising their voice, wanting to be heard, and is resulting in what I like to call the anger volcano. If you've never heard of this concept, imagine a volcano. It lays dormant for years, decades, maybe even centuries, until one day it explodes. Why does it explode? I'm no scientist, but my guess is that pressure builds and then it just goes poof. All the magma goes into the sky, bunch of smoke. And the same is true for people. We build up over time, and what builds up is our unexpressed needs and interests. The things that we're itching to feel heard about, yet don't actually ever feel or get heard. In this case, Chuck and Nancy Pelosi by proxy are battling with Trump in order to feel heard, and Chuck has had enough. He raises his voice and he allows his own anger volcano to show in order to situate some sort of power dynamic for himself where he can feel heard, resulting actually in President Trump also going on the defensive, saying, you're not going to have the best of me, so I'm also going to showcase my anger because that is right and correct in order to face that dynamic head on. This is a very old communication pattern. It's been used for centuries by warring tribes, businessmen, even diplomats. And yet, as we're now learning, as we grow and evolve as people, this type of communication pattern has little purpose. So let us continue.
Yeah, let me say something, Mr. President. You just say my way or we'll shut down the government. We have a proposal that Democrats and Republicans will support.
And again, because everyone is in this dynamic, their anger volcanoes are showing, Chuck does something really well, which is naming the dynamic. He's showcasing that in this dynamic, each side is using contentious tactics such as ultimatums, President Trump saying my way or the highway and I'll shut down the government. By naming the dynamic, it's a de-escalation tool that can otherwise be utilized to restore harmony and peace into a contentious type of argument. However, in this case, what it does is actually the opposite. By naming the dynamic, it showcases how President Trump is actually trying to control the conversation, which results in him not feeling like he has the power to decide the ultimate outcome in this case, snowballing the dynamic even worse. Which leads Nancy to try to bring some harmony back into the room.
Where you don't have walls, it is not effective.
Yeah.
Let's call a halt to this. We've come in here as the first branch of government, Article 1, the legislative branch. We're coming in good faith to negotiate with you about how we can keep the government
Open.
And here Nancy is trying to do it, saying, let's put a halt to this. Let's put a halt to this. Anyone feeling this or seeing this most likely was thinking the same. And yet Nancy, for her own wisdom, is trying to de-escalate it by bringing in some facts. And also bringing in the interest again, which is that they're here to negotiate in good faith. The fact being that they are the first branch of government, the legislative branch, and it's not the White House that actually legislates. But this does more harm than good, because it actually snowballs the dynamic even further by making President Trump go on the offensive.
about how we can keep the government
Open.
We're going to keep it open if we have border security. If we don't have border security, Chuck, we're not going to keep it open.
I'm with you. We are going to.
I'm with you, I'm with you. The words that do not get heard. President Trump is here again trying to put his power into the dynamic. And yet, again, a missed opportunity by everyone in the room. A shared interest. They all want the same thing, and yet are going about it differently. President Trump does something actually really well following this, which is that he uses humor in order to de-escalate it, his own type of technique that he has been known for in the past.
Yes,
Is that
we
right?
do.
Good.
We do.
See? We get along. Thank you, everybody.
He elicits a chuckle, a laugh from everyone in the room, most likely because the tension was palpable. And yet, in the same right, it also deflects and delegitimizes what could otherwise be Nancy's state or Chuck's.
It totally solves the
But I don't
problem.
want to take this.
And it's very important.
Unfortunately, this has spiraled downward when we came at a place to say, how do we meet the needs of American people who have needs?
And again, Nancy tries to restore some balance and harmony to the conversation. Unfortunately, this has spiraled out of control. Yes, Nancy, it definitely has. But what she does really great here is that she's asserting a meta argument. And in a negotiation, these are the types of claims that can otherwise bridge everyone's different interests if they are actually seized upon. How do we meet the needs of the American people who have needs? If they could work from that perspective and that angle, despite their political differences, they could maybe come up with a solution that everyone could live with. Unfortunately, that is not the case.
Excuse me, did we win the Senate?
It's
We
not
won the
the
Senate.
When the president brags that he won North Dakota and Indiana, he's in real trouble.
Because here we go again. President Trump says, excuse me, and yet does not wait to be excused. And Chuck, driving in the knife even further, tries to delegitimize President Trump's win. When the president brags that he won North Dakota or Indiana, that must mean he's in real trouble. He's attempting to create some sort of dynamic where he undercuts President Trump by going at his ego. And while President Trump looks unfazed through his quintessential look, it also means that he is not wanting to listen or engage in a collaborative way.
I also know that, Nancy's in a situation where it's not easy for her to talk right now, and I understand that, and I fully understand that.
And as such, President Trump does this. Instead of attacking Chuck, he goes after Nancy Pelosi. In his mind, maybe an easier target? I don't know. But what he does do is try to delegitimize why Nancy is in the room, speaking to her mindset, speaking to her negotiation leverage, as well as maybe her ability to even negotiate in good faith. But Nancy doesn't take that. She does something really well.
Please don't characterize the strength that I bring to this meeting as the leader of the House Democrats.
What she does is address the claim head on. She does it in a very collegial way. Please don't characterize the strength I bring to this meeting, but at least she does it. And what she does is regain her legitimacy by being in that room, asserting herself in a collegial manner, but in a tone that's respectful, as well as allowing herself to be that leader who is in there negotiating in good faith.
No, no, no.
And then you opened
20
it up very
times.
quickly. And
20
I don't
times.
want to do what you did.
20
But,
times you
Chuck,
have called for, I will shut down the government if I don't get my wool.
But it doesn't even matter. Why? Because right here you see what happens in a battling for ascendancy argument, which is that when something is not fully addressed and resolved, that issue pops its ugly head again. So you have a spiral misunderstanding occur, which is that overall, no one is actually understanding the viewpoint of the other because they are in such a contentious zone that they're only arguing for the sake of arguing. There's no dialogue, no communication, and worst of all, no collaboration. And so what you do see is that you get the same issue coming up over and over again.
for border
But we
security.
believe you shouldn't shut
Okay.
it down.
Thank you very much, everybody.
And so it ends with President Trump having the last word. They get nowhere. He says, "Thank you very much, everybody." But as you see on the faces of everyone in the room, they're all itching to have the last word. If this shows you anything, is that the way we have communicated or are communicating currently is not working. From politics to the business world to even your interpersonal relationships, when we all feel like we need to convince someone as to our position, influence them, leverage them, and or motivate and or manipulate to get our way, it creates a communication dynamic that actually leaves everyone unheard. And if anything, in today's day and age, where we're needing to solve and actually have collaborations in order to create solutions to complex issues, we need a different way. We need the ability to hear one another out, to create space where everyone has the ability to be not only unfiltered, but uninterrupted in what it is that they are talking about and the essential why.